Welcome back everybody. Today with this lecture we are going to see the effect of devaluation, right? So the monetary approach argues that devaluation can only have an effect on the balance of payment by just influencing the demand for just money in relation to the supply of money, right? So the monetary approach emphasizes that a devaluation will just have a transitory beneficial effect on the balance of payment only so as long as just the authority do not just simultaneously engage in just an expansionary open market operation, right? So the important point derived from the monetary model concerning the effect of devaluation is that exchange rate changes are just viewed as incapable of bringing about what lasting change in the balance of payment, right? So a devaluation or maybe a revaluation operates strictly by causing the disequilibrium in the money market, right? That means causing deficit or maybe surplus in balance of payment, right? So which continue only until what equilibrium is restored in the money market via the reserve change, right? So as you have seen here with the graph, there is a price level here with this graph, right? There is price level, there is exchange rate, right? If their purchasing power parity is this line, there is this point, right? The exchange rate is increased from S1 to S2 when the price level is just increased from this one to this one, right? So in the real income, you can see also here there is the same income, right? The income is not changed, but the exchange rate is, or the price is what changed from price 1 to price 2, right? When the demand is increased from aggregate demand 1 to aggregate demand 2, and the aggregate supply is the same, right? So the income is the same, there is no change in the income, but here there is the exchange rate is what increased from S1 to S2 when just the price is increase from price 1 to price 2, right? When we consider this graph, there is money demand 1 and also money demand 2, right? So the reserve is increased from R1 to R2, right? And so what the money is increased M1 to M2, right? So by looking at this, a monetary exchange rate equation, right? The demand for money in the home country is given by this equation, right? So the demand for money in the foreign economy, this is the foreign economy, this is the home country, right? This is the home country, this is what the foreign economy, right? So the exchange rate is determined by purchasing power parity, right? By in the previous we have already derived this one, we have seen this formula, right? This exchange rate is equal to what? The price of home country over the price of a foreign country, right? So an equilibrium money demand is equal to what? The money supply, right? We all know that, right? So money supply is equal to money demand, and this the money supply within the home country is equal to the money demand in the home country. Similarly, we can also have money supply in just in the foreign country is equal to money supply in the foreign country, right? So we can just denote the relative money supply function as money supply over money supply what for home country over money supply for foreign country is equal to KPY, this one KPY for home country over KPY star. That means the what foreign currency is the foreign one, right? By just dividing this number, we see this P and P star is equal to exchange rate, right? We can put here, right? P over P star means what? S, right? We have already seen here, right? So by this formula, MS over MS star is equal to KSY over this number, right? So and solving the above equations for the exchange rate yields this number. By simplification, we can simplify exchange rate as this one, right? So this equation says that the exchange rate is determined by what? The relative supply and the demand for different just national money stocks, right? So So the money supply expansion under a fixed exchange rate. How money supply expansion under fixed exchange rate is determined, right? Right? If the exchange rate of a country is fixed, right? If it is fixed, right? If it's not floating, this means that the authorities have to buy the currency when it is what? In excess of supply, and sell it when it's an excess of demand, right? In the private market, to avoid currency depreciation or maybe appreciation, right? So when the authorities sell the domestic currency, this leads to a rise in what? The reserves, right? Of the foreign currency, right? If the authorities buy the domestic currency, they do so with the foreign currency, and so their reserve falls, right? So let us now consider what happened if there is just an expansionary just open market operation under a fixed exchange rate, which raises the money supply by a central bank purchase of domestic treasury bonds, right? So by considering this, we can just analyze this graph, right? So as you have seen here, when the price is dropped from price 1 to price 1 to price 2 to price 1, the exchange rate is still the same, right? The exchange rate is still the same, but here also the income is the same, still the same, right? But the aggregate demand is increased from aggregate demand 1 to aggregate demand 2, and the price is increased from price 1 to price 2, but still the real income is the same, right? There is no change in the real income, right? And also when we consider the reserve, when the reserve is decreased from R1 to R2, right? There is a reduction in the reserve in the money supply, and what? The reserve, right? This is the reserve and money supply function, right? But in the price and real income function, the real income is the same, remains the same, but the price is what? Just increased or decreased, right? It varies, right? So the money supply expansion under a floating exchange rate, right? How to determine in the floating exchange rate, right? So under floating exchange rate, the monetary approach just maintains that there is no such things as a balance of payment, right? Deficit or surplus, as the authorities do not just intervene, right? Authorities do not intervene to purchase or sell the domestic currency, right? Since there are no change in the international reserve, there is what? No balance of payment, surplus or deficit, right? In the floating exchange rates, right? So as the change in the reserve is zero, any current account deficit or surplus has to be what? Offset by a net cash capital or cash outflow or inflow of a moment, right? So this is what we need to consider within this floating exchange market, right? In this case, when the price and exchange rate function is given, the exchange rate is increased from S1 to S2, right? When the price is increased from price 1 to price 2, right? But when we just consider the price level within the real income, what? When the price is increased, what? The real income also increased, right? It increased, right? And also, you can also hear the reserve is still the same, right? Still the same. So the effect of an increase in the income under fixed exchange rate, right? So within the context of the monetary approach to the balance of payment, an increase in domestic income can only have an effect on the balance of payment by influencing the money demand in relation to just the money supply, right? So this is that we need to consider, right, within this exchange rate, right? So the effect of an increase in income under floating exchange rate, just an increase in the income under floating exchange rate, what has its impact on the exchange rate? By influencing the demand for money in relation to the supply of money, right? Have you seen here? This is the real income is increased from Y1 to Y2, right? Exchange rate is what? Decreased from S1 to S2, right? But there is no any impact on the reserve, right? So an increase in the foreign price under fixed exchange rates, right? So the effect of an increase in the foreign price level under fixed exchange rate are depicted in the following figure, this one, right? So the reserve is increased from R1 to R2, the income is the same, exchange rate also is the same, right? And the other one is an increase in the foreign price level under floating exchange rates, right? So the effect of a rise in the foreign price level when the exchange rate is left to float freely are depicted in the figure, right? So this is what we need to consider within this, right? The income is increased from Y1 to Y2 and the exchange rate is decreased, right, within this. What's the implications of monetary approach, right? What's the implication? So the distinct features of the monetary approach to the balance of payment is that money market disequilibrium is seen as what? A crucial factor in provoking balance of payment disequilibrium, right? So the core of the monetary approach is that what? The money demand or the demand for money function is what? Stable and just predictive function of relatively few variables, and the demand for money is just the demand for real money balance and just excess money balance rise aggregate demand, right? So what are the implications of the monetary approach? A major implications of the monetary approach is that in a fixed exchange rate region, right, the authority have to accept a loss of control over their domestic monetary policy as the price of fixing the exchange rate, right? They should be accept, right, their loss, right? They have to what? Accept the loss of control over their domestic monetary policy as the price of fixing the exchange rate, right? So as we have seen, any attempt to expand the domestic money supply under a fixed exchange rate leads to what? A balance of payment what? Deficit, right? And the need to purchase back the currency on the foreign exchange market, right? They need to just purchase back again, right? And also if the foreign price rises, then so does the domestic money supply and domestic price level, right? So under fixed exchange rate, the authority lose the ability to pursue independent monetary policy, right? So the only thing that the authority can do is to control the composition of the monetary base, right, between its domestic and what? Foreign component within this range, right? So with a fixed exchange rate, an increase in the domestic components of the monetary base leads to an equivalent fall in the foreign components, right? So by this, by fixing this range, they can control their balance of payment deficit and surplus, right? Right. So criticisms of the monetary approach. What are the criticisms that we have seen in a monetary approach, right? Some argue that an increase in the monetary or just some argue that an increase in the domestic, right, increasing domestic supply may not be reflected exclusively in an equivalent fall in the reserve under a fixed exchange rate, right? So some critics have argued that to regard the balance of payment as a monetary phenomena is only just true in the sense that the balance of payment measure monetary flow between domestic and foreign residents, right? And also they argue that it is quite wrong to regard the balance of payment deficit and surplus as exclusively due to monetary decisions, because the questions of cohesion is just an open issue, right? And also the survey of the monetary approach by this background in 1988 has just argued that nearly every assumption made by a proponent is empirical what? Open to question, right? There is just ample evidence that money demand function can be highly unstable. Economies are just rarely at full employment, and purchasing power parity is useless as a guide to exchange rate movement, right? So these are and there are also other criticisms that we need to consider within monetary approach, but you can read all these criticisms, right, if you need it. So this is the end of this balance of payment chapter. So